Welcome to BootCamp. I hope you're having a very good time here. My name is Vic. I'm an engineer on Google Docs. I'm going to give a talk today about how to store all of your data in Google's cloud. So if you have any questions or anything, we're going to have a question and answer session at the end of the talk. But if you just don't think of your question now or whatever, you can hit me up on Twitter or Buzz. There's my Twitter name right there. So let's get started. This is my speaker meter tag. If you want to scan this now and browse to that URL, and you can rate me as I speak or whatever, and I'll get some indication as to how great my speaking abilities are or how much they suck. So, let me go back. I saw some people scanning it. OK. So to start off, we all know that there's a lot of cloud services nowadays that offer the ability to store data. This is nothing new. This has been around for quite a long time. I mean, if you think back to it, the first cloud storage, it really existed in maybe the late 80s or early 90s, where you had this idea of a mainframe, and you could upload data there via some means and then consume it in some other means. But usually, there was this idea that you uploaded data to be processed. And when you uploaded data to be processed, you did it because the terminals with which you were uploading this data or submitting this data were actually weak in terms of power, and the power was concentrated into the mainframe. So this idea is sort of recurring today. So developers need the ability to do more than just store the data. They actually need the ability to process large amounts of data in a short amount of time. So we're starting to move back to this idea of putting data in the cloud and then having thousands of computers act on it and then giving you back some meaningful result. Users also have more needs of this data. So they need to be able to access and manipulate the data from pretty much anywhere. So in lots of different ways. I mean, a majority of data is actually documents, things that users edit on a regular basis, especially in an enterprise environment, right? So I mean, in an enterprise environment, you have docs, calendars, things like that, that people use every single day. In a consumer setting, there's actually a lot of this as well. People manage their photos, their contacts, other personal information, and they store all of this data traditionally nowadays in the cloud. But if we take a look at everything that somebody's doing, there's a large portion of it being done in documents. So let's compare options for storing cloud data. Firstly, we have offline documents, and this is a pretty basic concept, right? I'm pretty sure that I remember like 2 decades ago working in Microsoft Office and using offline docs. So that was OK. I had the ability to edit documents, but there wasn't really built-in collaboration or sharing, and there wasn't any sense that these documents were accessible from anywhere. And I also had a whole lot of trouble converting between formats. So I remember having lots of trouble converting to things like PDFs or, for a long time, other Office formats. So this was actually a pretty limited option. And even today, if you want to share something from an offline document system, you traditionally attach it to an email and send it off. So that's actually not a very good way to share things at all. So skipping Google Docs for a minute and moving on to the traditional cloud storage. Traditional cloud storage is actually kind of dumb in that here we can upload things and access them from anywhere, but we can't do anything with that data, right? So users can't do things like edit documents. There's no built-in collaboration or sharing. And lastly, it's really hard to convert things between formats. But Google Docs actually does a lot of these things. So it fits a use case of a cloud storage platform because it does all of these things and also gives you cloud services to act on your data. So going into Google Docs in a little bit more detail, this is your Google Documents list. So just a quick show of hands, who uses Google Docs? I think every single person in the room raised their hand. So that's fantastic. So you're familiar with this, right? You have collections. You have all of your files and documents there. You can star things. It's really easy to share. So this is a really standard interface for accessing all of the stuff you put in Google Docs. So For those of you who might not know, your documents list can actually contain more than just documents. It can contain videos, spreadsheets, any other file type, and collections. So videos, we actually recently added support for playing videos in your documents list. So if you upload a video of like your kids playing or something, you can watch that. And we also support uploading other file types as well now. So you can upload maybe an audio recording you made or a zip file, things like that. So they can upload or download anything in the Google Docs interface. So what we want to start to look at now is doing that in a programmatic manner, right, with the Google Documents List API. So who here has used the Google Documents List API? I see like maybe 5, 6 people. If you're not using this API and your applications need cloud storage, you should definitely consider using this API for a large number of reasons that I'm going to go through. But today, what we're going to do in detail is go through a sample of working with the Documents List API and give you an introduction into using this API. And this introduction is for the main I/O talk about the Google Documents List API at I/O on Wednesday. So the Documents List API allows your application to do pretty much anything you can do in the Google Docs UI. So you can upload files, you can download files, you can star items, move items between collections, create collections, all of this stuff. So really, the API allows your applications to act as if they were a user in the UI. Some of the basic features, you can store any type of data. This is new. Previously, you could not store any type of data with the API. So now you can store any type of data. You can also securely share data. So secure sharing is actually a really important feature of Google Docs in that you can share something with someone without sending it via plain text email. So to be clear here, if you use a traditional offline document or an offline file, like let's say you want to send a text file to your friend in New York. If you were to do that and you emailed it to them, the email is most likely going to be in plain text, and the attachment is also going to be in plain text. So there are things you can do, like you could encrypt the email, but generally people find encrypting email to be inaccessible, and not a lot of people know how to do that. But people know how to go into Google Docs, and they know how to click share. And so when you do this, what happens is an email gets sent off to your friend, and it's a sharing email with no sensitive information in the email unless you choose to include the item in the email. So then the user has to click on a link and then go to Google Docs. And all of this time, they've been acting via HTTPS, and all of the transactions are secure. So you don't have to worry about things being stolen like that. Also with the API, you can manage collections. I'm going to go into that in a little bit. So who uses the API? Just to give you some example use cases. Here are 3 example use cases. The first one is Memio. Memio builds this product called Memio Connect. And it essentially connects all of your individual devices to the Google Cloud and syncs things back and forth. They also give a backup product. Simplicity does something similar, but in a more desktop-oriented setting. So Simplicity has a sync client for your desktop, and it can sync different portions of your hard drive very easily to the cloud. So here we have 2 products that are actually pretty successful, and what they do is sync things to the cloud. And lastly, we have the Google Docs app for Android. So the Google Docs app for Android is new. Has anybody used this? Yeah, it's sick, right? I really like this app a lot. This actually also uses a Documents List API. So what it's doing is from your Android phone, it's essentially a Java application that uses our Java client library and makes requests to the API on a regular basis on behalf of a user to request a list of documents or let you interact with those documents. So those are three use cases. Some more popular use cases are definitely, like I said, synchronization, but backups to the cloud. So I personally, on my workstation at home, I set up, I used to have like an rsync script set up, but what I realized was I had to have like an SSH client wherever I was to access my documents from my web server, and that wasn't really convenient. So I started syncing my documents to my Google Docs and my files, and in doing this, I can actually access my files from anywhere. So that's really useful. You don't need any special clients or anything to access your data. Also, document editing. Some people prefer to implement their own document editors and actually use Google Docs as the storage for the data. So there are a lot of products that, for instance, implement their own web version of spreadsheets, or they build a sync client between Microsoft Office and Google Docs. And in those cases, document editing is actually a use case for this, but the storage is all handled by the Documents List API. Also, revision management. I've seen people implement wikis and corporate intranets and things like that. So it's really easy to edit text in Google Docs. So doing something like a corporate intranet or a wiki is really simple, and you can manage all of those revisions yourself through the Documents List API. So we're going to get started developing apps now. So the documentation is at this Google link. So I don't know if anybody cares to write that down. But essentially, the documentation is a complete guide on how to do every single thing with the API. We're not really going to go through the documentation today, which is why I'm giving you the link. I'm going to go through some more advanced use cases that are in the documentation, but are much better explained in person. So this is just a screenshot of the documentation. So you can see here, it's laid out in a use case-oriented manner. So if you need to, for instance, create a collection or create a sub-collection or learn how to upload a drawing or download a spreadsheet, all of those things are here and described in detail. But again, I'm not going to walk through the documentation today. Instead, I want to go through some specific keywords and terminology before we move into actually writing code. So for the purpose of this talk, and when you're working with the Documents List API, a document is any entry that's editable in Google Docs. So don't think text document here. Think spreadsheet, drawing, presentation. Text document is also one. But this is just something that you can edit in Google Docs via the web UI. Whereas a file is something that cannot be edited in the Google Docs UI. Okay? Does everybody understand the distinction? So a file is not a document. It means when you upload it, it's just there for storage. You can't yet edit it in Google Docs. A collection is something that contains other entries. So a collection is kind of like a folder, and it's kind of like a label. We actually used to call these things folders, but we realized that that's not a really good name because people have some predisposition on what a folder is. So a collection is like a folder in that it has a hierarchy. So you can put a collection inside of another collection. Okay, so kind of like a folder in that regard. But it's like a label in the sense that a document or a file can belong to more than one collection. Okay, so you could apply a collection as a label to 10 documents. Okay, and then you could apply a different label to those same 10 documents. So we've kind of merged the idea of a folder and a label into one thing, and we call it a collection. If you don't understand how those two things work together, you can more or less think of these as a folder, though. Lastly, a resource is any of the three things that I've previously described. So the API works in such a manner that things are abstracted out so that you can change the title of a collection just like you would change the title of a document. And we try to make it really easy. So a resource refers to any of those three things. So who in the room knows Java? Almost everybody. Who in the room knows Python? Less people. OK. So I'm going to go through some Java samples and then some Python samples. But if you don't know one or the other, you should be able to follow along. If not, all of these things can be figured out pretty easily with the documentation, or you can just ask me later. So here, what we're doing is we're creating a new URL. And the Documents List API is a REST-based API. Everybody knows REST? Yes? If you don't know REST, there's other talks on it here. But essentially what it means is it's a single endpoint that allows you to create, retrieve, update, and delete resources. So here we have the single endpoint. And if we do an HTTP GET request, we can fetch a list of documents. And if we do an HTTP POST, we can create a new document or file. So here, I'm creating a new URL, and then I'm fetching that URL into a feed. And the feed here is just like a list of resources. And then for each resource in that list, I'm just printing out its title. So this is like the hello world of the Documents List API, right? You're just fetching a list of documents in files and then printing them out. Everybody understand what's going on here? Cool. So here's a much more complex example. Here's an example of uploading your existing documents. So let's just walk through this really quick. The only line here that really matters is the top line, because this is what's calling the method we defined below. So here we're calling upload file, and then path to your file .doc, and then we're giving it a title. So after that, we print out where the document ended up on Google Docs, and you can give that link to a user, for instance, to click on and then access it in Google Docs. So the upload file method is where all the interesting stuff happens. We create a new Java file object based on the given path, and then we find out its MIME type. So these are pretty much the two things required to upload a document. You need to know the path of the file on your hard drive, and you need to know its type. So if you wanted to upload a text document, you don't want to upload it, for instance, as a presentation. Then lastly, what we're going to do is create a new documents list API entry. We're going to set the file to the file we just created, and then we're going to set its title. And then lastly, we're going to do the HTTP post request to insert this at that endpoint. So long story short, we found a file on the hard drive. We determined its MIME type, and then we sent it to the Google Documents List API. And now the Google Documents List API is going to take it from there. It's going to interpret your document, convert it to a Google Docs format, and then make it editable in the web UI. So I don't know, what is this, 20 lines of code, and we're uploading stuff and having it converted automatically. It's pretty nice. So another example, remember I said documents are not files. If you want to upload something and make sure that it does not get converted, you can use convert equals false. So we won't convert it if we don't know how to convert it. But if you wanted to, for instance, upload a text file and make it not editable via a user, you could do convert equals false. So there are lots of reasons to do this. Maybe you only want this file editable on the user's hard drive and not from Google Docs or something like that. So convert equals false. So you would use this to upload a zip file or an MP3 file, maybe, something like that. So that's all pretty simple. I just want to get a little bit more advanced now. So I want to get a little bit more advanced with this use case. How do you turn an image of text into text that you can edit? Ideas? Anybody? You can shout them out. So who in the audience knows about OCR? Cool. So we're going to go through OCR a little bit today and how you can implement it with one line of code. So OCR stands for Optical Character Recognition. And essentially what this allows you to do, if you implement it properly, is turn an image of text, which is a set of pixels, into a textual representation. So in this case, we have that stop sign. And everybody here knows that it says stop. But does a computer know that it says stop? And so optical character recognition allows us via a series of algorithms to turn it into a text file, right, that we can edit. So we can edit those characters. Now, this brings up a whole bunch of important points. Firstly, can somebody tell me what is the paragraph style of a stop sign? Anybody know? No, right? So it's pretty confusing. What is the paragraph style of a stop sign? So OCR has to do a lot of analysis on how to make this show up correctly in a document. It's one thing to turn it into text. It's another thing to make sure that all of the letters are capitalized and that it shows up in the correct paragraph setting, right? So Google Docs actually allows you to do this very easily. So we would take all of the previous code and just change it so that we say OCR equals true at the end of the URL, and that's it. Now, when Google Docs gets the file, it's going to use optical character recognition on the file and turn it into an editable document. So this is pretty sick. This is like my favorite feature. So we're going to take a look at how we do this in action. So let me pull up TextMate. So here I have a Python program that I wrote. And the sole purpose of this Python program is to upload an image and get text back. Okay? So if you're not familiar with Python, oops, I'm used to using Vim, so you can see me type JK there. You can, if we scroll through, if you're not used to using Python, here I'm just putting a shebang saying this should run with the Python interpreter, and then copyright comments, whatever. Then the imports. These imports are used in a variety of ways. But the important one here is that we're importing the GData docs API client. So all this means is that we at Google write a Python client library, and then we give it to you for free. And the purpose of this library is to make these HTTP requests that I talked about for you. So we have the equivalent in Java and .NET and PHP. So if you're using any of those languages, using the API should be really simple. So here I'm importing the Python one. And I'm going to write an upload method. So I'm just going to create a docs client. And all this is some class that makes these HTTP requests very simple. And then I'm going to log in. So here I'm using client login with a username and password. This is my test account. If you log in and delete stuff, that will just annoy me. So next, we're going to get that base URL we talked about. So that's like the feeds default private full thing that you saw before. Now, we're going to iterate over a list of files. And for each file, we're going to do some stuff. Just because I was lazy, I didn't detect the MIME type. I just assumed that you were using a JPEG file. We're going to append that OCR equals true flag to the end of the URL. And then we're going to open up the file, read it into some file container that's part of the client library. And then we're going to call client.upload. So this is about 10 lines of code, and we just uploaded a file with OCR in Python. The rest of this, actually, at the end of this method, what it does is it prints out success, and then the URL at which we can access the new editable document on the web. The rest of this is just like some option parsing stuff that's not really relevant. We're just going to pass in a list of files. So if I come back here, you can see me testing out some random data. So I have this directory with a couple of things in it. Docslist.py, I'm sorry, that's red on green for some of you, is the file that we're going to run. And we're going to just pass in -f stop.jpg. So I just printed out the options that we passed in there, make sure they're parsed correctly. Success. So I just ran a command, uploaded it to the Google Cloud, and converted it to text. This is going to be amazing if I can find Firefox. Hold on one second. Apparently, I never learned how to copy and paste. Why is that not working? Search bookmarks history. OK. Oh, that looks more like it. All right. So here we have the original stop sign image. So we just include this in the document so you know what you converted. But you can easily remove this from the document just by converting the document to like a raw plain text file. And then the image will be thrown away. And then down here, this little word is what I've been looking for. So this word, I can edit. I can insert stuff into it. It's raw text. So it read the stop sign, put it in the correct character case, and then put it in the correct paragraph style down here. So that's pretty crazy. But that's kind of a silly example because not many people are like, I wonder if this stop sign says stop. So instead, what we're going to do is look at a little bit more of an advanced sample. The question was, will it also do font style? And the answer is no, not at this time, because we don't have the stop sign font registered, sorry. So here's another one. This is from the University of Texas. I don't really know what it's about. I just searched for it on the web. And it says, in July 1845, Texas formally accepted an American proposal to be annexed to the United States. I guess that's kind of important. So anybody from Texas? Woo! All right. So we're going to convert this into a textual form. And then we could do something like put it on our blog in text form so that it's searchable. People can copy and paste it much more easily, things like that. We can change the font if we wanted to. So this is called text1.jpg. Let me go back to my terminal And if I come up, and instead of stop, let me do text1.jpg. So it just takes a second. And there we go. So it's uploaded and converted. This is all live. I didn't have some master plan to fool you all. Let me go back to Firefox, new tab, and open this up. So here's the original image, right? This is not editable, right? If I delete this image, the whole image goes away. And down here, I'm not sure if you can see this, but well, that was kind of slow. In July 1845, something, 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 Texas was annexed. So that's pretty sick, right? I just took an image off of my hard drive, uploaded it to the cloud, and then had Google's thousands of computers operate on your one file and convert it into raw editable text like this. So yes. Yeah, cool. So actually, I have a lot of international friends, especially now that I work at Google. It seems like half the company works in a different office. And on occasion, I have no idea what the hell people are saying because they speak a different language than I do. So this is something that we can resolve with Google Docs. What we're going to do is show that OCR isn't actually just limited to English. So if I come back to Finder, and I look at text 2, let me zoom in here. I don't speak German. Does anybody speak German? All right. So this is some German text. I don't really know what it says, but I'm going to find out, right? Because I'm going to convert it away from this image into OCR. And then if I wanted to, I could use the translate features of the API to translate that text to English or vice versa. So if we come back to the terminal, I've got this in text2.jpg. I can upload text2. And just give it a minute. It takes like extra long for German. No, just kidding. Sorry, you have a question? The question is, are you limited to the Roman alphabet? No, we do support other character sets. And that will become evident because, I mean, there are some English characters that do not show up. Or, like, I only know French ones, like accent grave, for instance, is not part of my US keyboard. So it's not just like an ASCII character set or anything like that. OK, so if I copy this and then I go back to Firefox, now that we have this, this English text converted with OCR, is change this, this whole use case just a little bit. It's really good that we have OCR for the ASCII character set. But actually, our OCR implementation can go quite a bit further. And so what we do allow is for the conversion of like other languages, essentially. So let's take an example that I have here of text2.jpg. And so if I zoom in here, you can see that text2.jpg is in German. So actually, does anybody in the audience know German? Oh, 2 people. Cool. OK, so maybe you guys can read this, because I can't. But that's OK, because what I'm going to do is turn this image of German text into an editable form. And then after it's editable, what we can do are some things like translation. So this is text2.jpg. So let me pull up my terminal here. Let me just find it here. And let me pull up my other terminal, sorry. So here we have the previous command that we just ran. So docslist.py-f text1.jpg, that was for the English version. Now we have text2.jpg, so let's just run that. So it's going to take a second here while it uploads and converts, but if we just give it one more second. There. OK, so we now have the converted form of the image here. So let me go back to Firefox. And if I pop this up, So if I scroll down, there's the German image. Remember, we said the original image shows up just so we can tell what we converted. And then if I scroll down further with compact controls on, if I scroll down further, delete that image out of there. We actually now have the editable text here, right? So this came straight out of the image, and you can see it's actually pretty high quality. And the paragraph form is intact. So if I scroll down further, you can see like here, nothing is out of place. The first line is where it's supposed to be. Now we can go a step further, right? Like if we, for instance, pull up this English version of the text, and I want to convert it, say, for my friend in Japan, what I can actually do is go to Tools, Translate Document, and then I can just choose a language. Let me choose Japanese here. Does anybody in the audience actually know Japanese? No? OK, well, my friend does. So I'm going to translate it. And boom. So we've actually now got the fully translated version, and it's editable. So I don't have the right character set. But you can see that I can make changes to the document just like any other document. So that's pretty huge, right? Now that we've been able to do that from the UI, we can actually also do it via the API. And it's really simple. Instead of saying OCR equals true, you're just going to say translate equals true to the API. So it's pretty straightforward. That's pretty much it for that sample. Let's go back to the presentation. Oops, I'm actually already in Firefox. So this has just really been an introduction to one of our most powerful services. I just want to take another quick survey. Who in the audience uses Documents List API? Wow. Yeah, so there were a lot of people. If you're not, again, this is definitely an API you should be considering if you're doing any form of cloud storage. That we provide both the storage and the services on top of that data to make your life as a developer easier. So if you're really interested in the Google Docs APIs in a more advanced use case, you should definitely come check out my main I/O talk on a similar topic. It's May 11th, so this Wednesday from 12:30 to 1:30 in room 2 at I/O. So at that talk, we're actually going to change the use case a little bit and go through writing a full application. So we're going to start talking about things like how do you build an App Engine app with the Documents List API? How do you implement three-legged OAuth with the API? How do you use something like JavaScript and HTML5 to upload files? Things like that. So it's going to be really, really interesting, full-fledged app. And we're going to go through all of the code. So it's going to be a very technical topic. So yeah, please attend that. Here's my, my speaker meter QR code again. If you're interested in giving me feedback on the talk, please let me know. It's right there. Also, the documentation is at that Google link. So we went through the documentation a little bit. But if you're interested in implementing any of these use cases, definitely just go take a look. Also, we have a really thriving and active forum community in which myself and Rob, who's in the audience, we're both engineers on Google Docs. And we post in there on a regular basis. So when you post in the forum, you're actually essentially emailing us, and we'll email you back. So definitely check out the forum if you have any questions or if you just want to show off something cool that you've done. That's all a good idea. So now I wanted to open it up for questions. It's not a limitation of the abilities of the document type. We just haven't implemented it yet. That's all. Other questions? Yes. So the question is, does the Documents List API support speech to text? Is that essentially your question? Yeah. The answer is no, but primarily because that doesn't have a lot to do with storage at the moment. However, if you were going to write, for instance, a web application or an Android application, there's this new HTML5 speech input. And the speech input allows you to convert speech to text. So if you wanted to have somebody, for instance, narrate a document, and just have everything they say pop up in a Google Doc, you could do this pretty easily. So in an HTML5 app, you would use the input speech type. On an Android app, there's the whole speech API. So that is definitely doable. So the documents list API more or less just handles the storage end or the conversion end from a non-speech perspective. Yeah. Other questions? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So the question is, she's building a knowledge management system, and they are building a gadget in Sites that uploads documents. And on occasion, the documents that her users upload are too large. That's your question. So we have the metadata feed, and that tells you the maximum file size of varying types of documents. So for various reasons, we have maximum file sizes. Some of those reasons just involve things like users abusing the system, and we want to avoid people abusing the system, just using it for legit causes. So that's one reason, but if you run into a specific file size limitation, there are a couple of best practices. One, you may consider splitting up the file into separate parts. I mean, you can upload any type of file you want. So if I took, for instance, a Microsoft Word file, and I literally cut it in half at the byte, and then have now two distinct files, and I upload both of those, and then later on I merge them back together, that's fine. Things like that. But for documents that are converted, you shouldn't really have any issues. We have a very generous quota for things like that. So I'm not sure I answered your question, but I'm happy to talk afterward. We can go through specifically your application. Other questions? Take you first. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question was, can I just upload an HTML file and add my own editor for the HTML? Yeah, so I mean, in that particular case, you would probably just upload the HTML file and say convert equals false. And if you do that, we won't try to convert it to something editable. And you can just build your own editor on top of that with no issues. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Oh. The thing that you're referring to, you're referring to like an open with thing, right? Like on I think a Mac, you can right click on something and click open with, like open it with some arbitrary application. Is that what you mean? That's something that we're considering, and I don't have any other information to give you at this point. Other questions? So the question is, are there any plans to convert character-based files to, vector-based? Well, actually, we already support SVG imports. So you can create an SVG file, upload that to us, and we'll turn it into a drawing for you. So that's fully supported. We're working on some other import formats from different file types, but SVG is definitely the best one so far. Other questions? Yes. No. How would you do that API-wise? I work on spreadsheets, and I will gladly talk to you about this after the talk. Yeah. But the short answer is no, not at this moment. Other questions? Yes. Yep. Yes. The question is, what about version control and collaborative editing? So in Google Docs, what we do, I mean, we pretty much live and breathe collaborative something. So collaborative editing is what Google Docs does really, really well. And those changes are handled by operational transforms. So when there's a conflict, essentially, we fork a version. Here, the Google Documents List API provides you a list of those versions, and you can actually create, retrieve, update, and delete versions of a specific document. So you actually have full control over the versioning of any document or file. Does that make sense? Yeah. OK. Other questions? Yes.
For a version change, does that change have to happen inside of the box? Or
No. No.
am I upload a new version?
Yeah. You can say, Google Docs API, here is a new version of this file. Please create one for me. And yeah. All right. Other questions? Yes.
Just real quick, in terms of accountability, let's say that someone does have access to the API automatically. Can they sort of meddle with revisions of things? For example, make a modification and then delete it so that the history of the file is obfuscated?
The history. That's a really good question. The question was, can a malicious user log into the API or like act using the API and muddle with revision history and then make changes that nobody knows about? The answer is that no, that wouldn't really work, because there's always going to be a latest revision, and the latest revision will give you essentially a history of everything that changed up to that revision. So if they deleted the latest revision, you'd be left with the original. So that really, I don't think, would work out. Yeah.
So they can't just delete, for example, the 6th revision out of 10?
They could delete that revision, but that revision's changes have already been applied in revision 7. So it's still going to be there. You can't maliciously add data and get rid of the paper trail. Yeah. Yes? Yeah, you could say .json, and then yes, you can update the contents of that file. If you send a create request each time, you'd end up with like 100 JSON files. But if you find this particular JSON file, you can change its contents with new stuff. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, yeah, sorry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. You wouldn't need a public docs account. So the API supports access control lists, which I refer to as ACLs. And so you actually have full control over a document's ACL. So you can, I forget the specific use case, but the question was, how do I essentially create a public repository of documents? You would upload all of these documents, and then you can mark them public to the world so that you just need the link to find the document. And then you share the link with whoever wants it. You can also be much less restrictive than that, or much less generous than that with your sharing. You could share it to like these specific people, these people that only have this link, things like that. Yeah. Anything else? OK. So again, my name is Vic. I'll be around BootCamp today and throughout all of I/O. This is Rob. He'll be around, the same thing. If you have any questions about the Documents List API or docs in general, feel free to find us and just ask us anything. All right. Thank you.